5 seconds to go, but boom, we are live. There's going to be a buffer for this, so it's good to see you all, and welcome to, well, the final for now episode of What's Up Asia. And that is something, first of all, I'd like to have that conversation about what that is all about, because actually we haven't talked in a couple of months, actually. I've kind of been following your news and we've messaged, but it's great to be talking to you, Stephen. We have to catch up, so let's do it with everybody at the same time. So how's it going? And tell us what's going on, man. Now that is interesting. You are frozen, Steve. Steve, are you there? Because you were talking there a minute ago. Okay, inauspicious start. Are you there? Talk. I'm trying to message him on Facebook. Well, let me bring you up to speed anyway while we sort this out. Pardon me. My voice is still a bit messed up again. Steve, who I've always thought of as the voice of Asia. I mean, he's got a great voice to begin with. He talks about news, and I always thought it was great that his personal, indie sort of podcast has been actually beating Voice of America in different countries all over Asia. Well, it looks like they decided that if they're beating you, have them join you, is the philosophy of Voice of America. And they have, it appears, hired Steve to come join them. And that is what the new gig is going to be. Am I spoiling the final show? So what is happening with this? Is this me? Let me. Hey, how are you? Look, it wouldn't be me if we didn't have technical issues. Let me just check the playback myself as well. So anyway, he's not responding on Facebook or okay, well, I can see my video is working at least, right? So the show tweeted out in Sanskrit. Wow, this is like, other times it's like gone out in it's gone out in like Portuguese and Czech, and this time it's gone out in Sanskrit. Well, that's interesting. That's right, the Voice of America. Well, maybe they found out he is the voice, and they took him away. He's not responding on Facebook, so I'm assuming he's got a connection problem. So anyway, let's hope that Steve comes back, because that's kind of the point. That's it. How is it going, everybody? I'll give a quick heads up, some self-promotion, shameless self-promotion, while we are waiting for Steve. First thing is that, pardon me, earlier this evening, the latest episode of Japan Business Time went live, Japan Business Time with Rochelle Kopp. Tonight's episode is from the topic from Phoenix 787 on how to get Japanese people involved in discussions. When Japanese are being passive and it's all the foreigners talking, how to bring the Japanese into discussions. Rochelle and I both share our opinions on that. That's a good show. It's much better than the one talking about working to death like we did last week. So after you finish watching this, make sure you go and check that out. Also, still no sign of Steve. Where are you, Steve? The other thing is that, as you know, I like to make music. And lately I've been interacting with a lot of other people who make music, actually. Just people have connected with me randomly. Some are members of the Tokyo Digital Crew. Some are other people I've connected with on SoundCloud and maybe coming into the Tokyo Digital Crew if they like the thing. Other people are just music makers and so on. A couple of rappers now. It's great. So rather than having all these conversations in different places, tonight I created a Facebook page for Tokyo Digital Crew. The idea being that's a Facebook page where all the different fantastic music-related conversations I can have, or I have, I'll post over there. So I'm not bothering the people who don't want to care much for the music stuff. But it's a focused place to talk about music and just sort of link and share all the cool stuff by people who make music, who just listen to music, like music, use music, abuse music, whatever you want to do. So check out on my Facebook thread for those people who have it, and that's all public anyway. You can see, or just search on Facebook for Tokyo Digital Crew, and there's our Facebook page. What we do not have is a Steve Miller. So let me Hey. So clearly this is still broadcasting, so the problem isn't me. So it appears indeed that, I don't know, maybe it was Putin. Maybe Putin found out the new Voice of America and he immediately tried to suppress it. That would be a theory. Let's go over into the comments. I'll tell you what, while we wait for Steve, anything you'd like to talk about? I am really looking forward to talking, one, of course, about all the North Korean news that's been happening. A lot of Korea focus. I mean, the settlement of the comfort women issue is the issue which we've been waiting to talk to, and there's been so much kind of fallout and development since that announcement. Peter Durfee, I feel privileged that you're in the comments and speaking on how to get Japanese engaged in discussions. Put them in your company, your boss angers them, they have a whole lot to tell. Well, that's not exactly the scenario that I was thinking of, but that is still a perfectly valid. That's right. If you have someone bad enough, everyone will start to talk, just not directly to your face. Yes, I think, Sean, bro, I think the DPRK has got him. Oh, there we go. So I've just got a message from Steve. His computer froze and is rebooting. Yeah, I think this is because he's been snapped up by Voice of America. Oh, so that's what I was saying. He's rebooting. He's going to be joining us again soon. Cool. This is a feature of the show, by the way. This is an intentional feature. We always have something intentionally go completely wrong with every single broadcast. But anyway, I know I've given the plot spoiler away here that he is going to be stopping Asian News Weekly podcast. And I don't know if it's an obligation with his deal with Voice of America that he won't be able to do this anymore, or if he's just so much of a rock star now that he doesn't want to be seen with bald guys. Well, obviously, bald guys aren't a problem for him, but guys with glasses and strange accents who are not very interesting to talk to. So, you know, he's going to be rocking it with Voice of America. But that said, I'm sure we're going to get him back and we're going to find out what's happening. I understand he's moving to the United States because apparently the Voice of America has to be in the US. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. But Steve is, of course, based in Seoul. And he is probably the most knowledgeable person about news from across Asia of anybody I've ever met. And that's why I love doing this show, because I can just throw out a random news topic like the latest parliamentary debate in Myanmar, and he knows everything about it, and particularly for the topics that are most interesting to me from Northeast Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and related stuff. I mean, the depth of information that this guy has. I mean, this is clearly, besides having an amazing voice to begin with, he is just the most knowledgeable person about news stuff that you will ever meet. And that is why this is such a great show, What's Up Asia. It's why we're a bit sad that we're going to have to stop the show for a bit. This has been a monthly show. I'm hoping we can reboot it a bit in the future, but very exciting stuff happening for him. Let's go back into the comments. Have you got any? So I sabotaged the game so they couldn't restart. Oh, here we go. And there is Steve, and you are moving. Welcome back, Steve. You don't have sound. Try the settings thing for the sound, and then we can get going, and we can welcome the Voice of Asia, soon to be the Voice of America. By the way, burn your enthusiasm. The Larry David, Bernie Sanders version of Curb Your Enthusiasm is amazing. Go and check it out on SNL. I mean, I love Curb Your Enthusiasm, and his Bernie Sanders thing is amazing. Just thinking of American stuff at the moment. Steve, are you there? Can you talk? There are no green dots indicating sound for you. I'm assuming at Voice of America they will have such an awesome setup that this sort of thing would never happen. There's a mute. There's a mute's off. And he's leaving and he's going to come back again. Thank you, Mr. Cordy Chip. I do look crazy talking to myself because that is what I do. I mean, yeah, honestly, for the cost of a $50 webcam just to not look as crazy when I do what I do anyway.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, sir. Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so sick of looking at myself on the screen, as I'm sure everybody is.
But you're such a handsome man, sir.
Keep talking. I'm just going to let you keep going with that thought. Feel free to explore the avenues. Voices of America. That's a cool.
Okay. If you say I'm the voice of America, you're the voice of New Zealand.
Man, I shouldn't say that. No, that's why we don't have a Voice of New Zealand, because the Australians would hack it constantly and put cheap samples onto it. So, Captain is on deck. We can now start the show, so make it so. What is happening with you? Tell us. Fill us in. It's been months since we've talked. It sounds like you've had one or two things happen. Fill us in.
Yeah, so of course, went on vacation, went to the United States, saw family, friends, and in the process wound up with a new job. So beginning in March, I'll be back in Washington, D.C. in the United States, working for the Voice of America.
So I've loved watching in different countries and so on. You have progressively, kind of shown up Voice of America with your podcast until now. I'm guessing that's factored into the decision that you're worthy of joining. It's been interesting how your own just personal private podcast has kind of been on equal footing with a service backed like Voice of America. So what does it deal with that? So what are you going to be doing with Voice of America?
Well, I mean, my exact role is kind of a hodgepodge, kind of a catch-all. So the job classification,
cleaning.
Well, kind of like that. No, the job classification that I'm in is a multimedia production specialist. So in the job description, there's some TV, some web reporting duties, some radio hosting duties, some radio packaging duties, possibly some other things that come up. And because of my expertise with podcasts, that's one of the other reasons why I was brought in to help work with their podcast options.
Right. Will you be able to use your extensive knowledge of Asian news to do anything in the broadcast capacity?
I don't know. It really depends. So being a 24/7 shop, I would love to continue to be involved with Asia-related news, Asia-related stories, but it really depends on where they need me.
Yeah. Well, still, I mean, it's fantastic. So the English teaching, the career, life, all of that's being packed up, and you're going to be dedicating yourself to basically radio, podcasts, Voice of America.
Yeah. So my wife and I have been spending the past week packing up, and we spent today. Anyone who knows me knows I love coffee, and one of the things that we have in our apartment are tons and tons of coffee mugs we have collected over the years, and today was the day we put them all in boxes.
How many boxes do you have of coffee cups?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 boxes.
See, that is a medical addiction right there. And I'm not talking about the coffee, I'm talking about the cups.
But when you start going through them, you realize how many you have. But at the same time, the reason why we have the coffee mugs is because they remind us of places that we've traveled over the years. So we actually had lots of fun conversations today talking about the places that we were when we picked up these mugs, and also the mugs that were sent to us by some of my fans over the years.
It makes sense. They're a lot more durable than T-shirts, for example, which is what people from New Zealand typically collect. So I get that. That makes a lot of sense.
So it was a lot of fun.
So wonderful news anyway. And you're going to be going to Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I'll be based in Washington, D.C., so we'll be there in March. Looking for a place to stay. Towards the end of this month, we'll ship everything by container vessel over there, and then sometime, hopefully by the end of April, we'll have our stuff.
Wow. And you're going to be there right in the middle of how long does it go? Because the election season goes until like July, right?
Well, no, November.
Is it November?
November is the election.
Oh my God.
It's just starting now.
I'm starting to think actually that American elections some like a form of mass mental illness, aren't they? I mean, the way that the internet becomes, the way that, and it goes on for so long.
Well, that's one of the biggest gripes is that the American election cycle goes on for 2 years now.
Yeah.
Well, and just so you know, one of the reasons why I'm late is that I'm using my wife's laptop, which is the newest version of a laptop that we have in the house. So I can only run our Hangout section. So if there's anything showing up in the comments that I should address, please let me know, because that's why it crashed before, as I had the other window open.
No problem. I have one eye on the comments, and people, by the way, can add questions. We haven't done a show since December. Actually.
December, that is correct.
And we skipped January for New Year's reasons, and And last week, I completely lost my voice last week, although I still am not in great shape this week. But let's face it, there hasn't really been anything at all going on in Asia. So
it's been a slow week. It's been a slow week, slow couple of months.
So I mean, maybe it's good timing that this is when the series comes to an end. I mean, given that our two countries, which have so often been the focal point of conflict and debate within Asia, Korea and Japan, so often the conflict point. If there's any good time to end the show, surely it's when basically South Korea and Japan, fully and finally bury the hatchet as they have and completely settle and reconcile on all issues that have ever existed. Hasn't that been wonderful? How well that has gone?
It's been fantastic. No problems whatsoever.
None. It's just like a never-ending party at the moment. I mean, so yeah. I mean, let's go through. I think it looks to me like Park Geun-hye spent the whole of like last year, and maybe since she came into power, maybe she's been building up to this. Maybe the whole being cold to Japan was setting the ground for this big settlement, and the sort of point where she can use to actually improve relations with Japan. And she was dropping hints, and there were sort of people building up, there might be a big surprise by the end of the year, which we were scoffing at. And then he said,
not only us, but everyone was scoffing at, because we're looking at, and for those that haven't figured out what we're talking about yet, it's the whole comfort woman deal between South Korea and Japan. Now, everyone was saying, come on, Park Geun-hye, you're smoking some crack or something, because what has been telegraphed as the defining tenets of a deal with Japan, Tokyo was light years from. And no one saw this whole deal coming. And back early, I would say summer or early fall, when she said, yes, we're almost there at a deal. And even the ministers out of Japan were saying, I don't know what she's talking about. We're not near it. Come on, it's gotta be nuts.
At the same time, and people have asked me my thoughts on this, and I think Abe, I genuinely think that the people on the Japanese side were smart enough to realize what the outcome would be of giving them some sort of deal close to what they wanted. And I think they also set it up very well to telegraph. They were leaking to the media, this is going to be our negotiating position in the secret negotiations. And so they made it look like the final deal was a huge concession on the Japan part, which they rushed to do. They sent Kichida over to Korea. He conceded like double on everything that they said was their final position. So it looked like a huge kind of arm wrestle victory for the Korean negotiators. And that's probably how they were able to secure the deal. But you know what I think Abe realized? Just give them a deal, and then because that takes the focus off Japan, where it's always been that Japan hasn't addressed this issue properly, and everyone's always been, I think the global media has universally been very sympathetic to the Korean side on this consistently. But by giving kind of a generous enough deal that the Japan side can live with, and lose a little bit on that negotiation, it has turned all the focus, and you talk about Washington Post, New York Times, all the features on this issue in the last couple of months have been, well, actually, it's politically very complex in Korea, the relationship with Japan, all the dynamics that make this such a hard deal to swallow for the Korean side, and how that's come out. It's switched all the focus internally onto, what's the deal with Korea that they can't process this. So what has been happening in Korea since this deal was agreed?
Well, okay, so you first have to take a look at how the deal manifested. Now that's your take. I think my take on the whole thing's a little bit different. And it's just this, the United States and several UN and a few others were really trying to stress that some kind of resolution needed to happen in 2015. 50th year of normalization, 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. And, I think we both have always agreed that in terms of, with regard to compensation, the 1965 bilateral agreement pretty much let that ship sail on restitution.
Right.
So I really think what happened is that through all these negotiations, you have the Japanese side saying, look, this is our position. This is what we're going to say. We're not going to give you anything new. We're not going to pay restitution. We're not going to, cop to any kind of responsibility. And at the end of this year, 70 years, in Abe's August 15th address, he said, we're not going to continue to apologize. We're going to move on. Yeah. So essentially, they went into the final negotiations saying, listen, we'll get Abe to issue not a personal apology, but say that he personally reiterates the previous apologies. We'll create a fund, but not restitution. We'll pay, for the care of the comfort women.
Yeah.
If you agree that it's the final issue.
Right.
Take it or leave it, because we're not coming back anymore. And then because Pak wanted the feather in her cap, she was left with no choice but to take it. And that's why the comfort women weren't consulted. And that's really why everyone who I have spoken to in South Korea thinks it's a bad deal for the nation, thinks it's a bad deal for the survivors. And there really wasn't a whole lot of support domestically for it.
No, that's a good point. And there was a very big deal made about the angry comfort woman confronting the foreign ministry bureaucrat, how you killed me twice.
Right.
How you never consulted with me, and you're a collaborator just like the rest of them. And that was a very powerful video. The Korean Foreign Ministry issued a statement a little bit after that. They left a bit of a gap, and they said, well, wait a minute. We consulted with both of the comfort women groups. This time, and we were giving them information, and that's not fair. And while they were saying that, the Japanese government foreign minister was saying, oh, yeah, and get rid of the statue as well, please.
Yeah.
Which was just make it even more comfortable for the poor Korean foreign ministry stuck in between the angry comfort women and the Japanese, who would be even more antagonistic. And this is something where I was just reading like 4 or 5 days ago. And what was it in? Was it in New York Times or the Washington Post? But there was a thing talking about the dynamics. Oh, you know what? It was Nippon.com. It was Peter Durfee. He's in the comments. He's actually the translator of this site. There was actually an article by Daniel Rowe, an analyst on this, and he was sort of explaining that there are two comfort women groups, and there's one comfort woman group that's kind of generally more conservative and more government friendly, and there's one which is very affiliated with left-wing activist left-wing groups that's very opposed to Park, and the whole pillar of one of the pillars of left-wing ideology in Korea is all the right wings are, the children of ex-collaborators. The whole right wing in Japan is kind of tainted of Korea is tainted by the historical connection with Japan and the idea that they're too permissive with Japan, which, Park wears this brush because of her father.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's it was explaining there's politics going on here as well. That group, they played up as much as they could that they weren't consulted sufficiently, and that this is outrageous and the government are acting like collaborators. The other group was much more quiet. They engaged in the negotiations. They said they're not totally happy with the deal, but there's only like 10 of them out of the 45 or whatever the number is. There's only 10 in this one group, but apparently if the government thinks it's the best deal, we'll go along with it. So there was one group that was kind of quiet and more accepting of it, not totally happy, but accepting, and one outraged group where that lady was from that group, was kind of voicing the general sentiment, not just her own sentiment, obviously, but the whole, this is the government selling the Korean people out kind of.
Well, I mean, and there's a certain fair argument to that extent, because, I mean, if you look at what even Pak said previously, she was like, we need to have a definitive apology from the Japanese government. We need to have, an ownership or responsibility, and we need to have reparations paid. And what she got was, well, I heartfelt repeat the previous apologies. There was Japanese involvement, but no ownership of the system. And then we're going to give Korea money to operate a fund to help with the well-being of these women, but not pay any restitution.
Japan will fund it, but the Korean government will take responsibility, which is kind of what the Japanese position has always been, that the Korean government has to distribute the money.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the three main things that Pak said she was holding out for previously, she didn't get. And, to hail that as a, a huge testament of her diplomatic prowess, hails back to even earlier in the year when she said, when she accepted North Korea's admission of regret as a sorry for the landmine incident. But thankfully, President Park didn't have to deal too much with the comfort woman issue because true to form, something else happened to take the national specter off of that.
Indeed. And you know what? When we come to this next issue, I'm going to take the North Korean side on this one. I'm entirely sympathetic to the fact they launched a satellite. There's a satellite actually confirmed by U.S.
Well, this is before then, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before then, what was before then? There's so many things that happened.
The fourth nuclear test. Like 4 or 5 days after the Comfort Woman deal, we had the fourth nuke test.
The hydrogen bomb made for ants.
The hydrogen bomb.
Hydrogen bomb.
We got the air quotes there. Hydrogen bomb.
Well, yeah, we laugh now, but we could all be toast, at any second, of course. Yes, I'm sorry, of course, the nuclear test. I know for me, this was like, how many nuclear tests have they done? It's getting to be. I was kind of mocking. Yeah, the North Koreans kind of built it up, but I kind of said they should really, if they really wanted to shock the world and influence world opinion, they should instead of announcing a bomb, they should announce that they're going to dedicate their entire economy to producing free ice cream for everybody else. That would actually be much more effective. I think people were recycling. I remember it came out. The one I liked best was the new nuclear test. It was a bit like Kim Jong Un is stuck with new Death Star plots. All they can do is keep coming up with a bigger Death Star every time, and he needs to get a new script writer. But yes, that's right. That crisis did come up. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead because I actually find the recent rocket launch to be
Let's talk about that, because that certainly is a lot more interesting than the largely non-event of the fourth test. Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's fascinating on all sorts of levels. I mean, for a start, of course, they called it a space program, and of course, it probably is testing out for launching ICBMs that they want to put progressively bigger bombs on the capsule. In fairness, that's exactly what the US and Soviet space programs were. Is the first point that you can say. Those were the V2, those were German missile makers who were, the capsule of the Mercury program was like an afterthought, and it was frankly a test for putting a nuclear warhead on instead. So, them saying it's a space program, and everyone saying, no, it's a missile. Well, they actually, I feel rhetorically sympathetic towards the North Koreans, especially given that it looks like this time, for the first time, there's now confirmed that they actually put their little Sputnik into orbit, and that it even flew over the Super Bowl, as some people were saying.
Yeah, it tumbled a little bit in orbit, but it was confirmed there. North American Strategic Command confirmed that. Yeah. It's the second time they've been able to at least get something up that high. The South Korean space program has only had one successful launch.
Oh, really? I didn't even realize that South Korea had a space program. So.
They did. They had, it was a few, I want to say like maybe a year and a half after the first North Korean launch, they were actually able to get a launch vehicle up into orbit.
So what's interesting to me is the fallout of that rocket launch, particularly what's happened in the last few days. Do you have an idea what I might be alluding to?
Well, I mean, there's so much. I mean, as of today, Kaesong Industrial Complex is now closed, which is the joint operated, and that was something that Pak previously said she would never close.
Yeah.
Even though through other crisis and low ebbs in the North-South relations, it remained open. The only time in recent time that I can recall that it was ever closed was in 2013 after the third nuclear test, when things got testy between Pyongyang and Seoul. But now that's closed, at least for the time being.
Well, that is very interesting. That is significant. But what I find is actually more significant and more interesting is that right now South Korea and the United States are negotiating to deploy the missile shield within 1 week. And China is freaking out that, oh my God, America is going to have its nuclear ballistic missile shield basically pushed right up against their borders in Korea, which is going to completely neutralize their entire strategic nuclear missile force. And of course, America, the perfect justification.
And that's the thing too, is that and we've talked about this at length as well. The entire Western approach to dealing with North Korea has failed. And even a few months ago, Kim Jong-un, through his mouthpieces, said that the six-party talks were a complete failure and going nowhere. But China, everyone's been trying to get China to do more to rein in North Korea. Yeah. And if they'd actually done that, in a more strategic way, not saying that they needed to clamp down hard on China, but done something to steer Kim in a more positive direction, they could have avoided having THAAD right here on the peninsula.
And this is the thing. This is the difference between the nuclear test and the missile test. The nuclear test was another nuclear test, but frankly, other than, voicing outrage and, UN Security Council speeches and whatever, there's nothing really that different anymore. It was kind of shocking when they first did it, however many years ago. But, it's getting a little bit old now. But the fact that this is really the first missile that they've tested that's got a demonstrated capability of sending warheads to, given that it was flying over the Super Bowl stadium, the satellite, I mean, theoretically, they're now on the road to creating missiles that can actually, for the first time, properly endanger the US. I think the old long-range missiles could make it to like Hawaii or Alaska.
I mean, they could do a fair amount. I think if they really pushed it, they could have gotten to Alaska. But I mean, but at the same token, 38 North has done a great job of taking the satellite imagery that's made available and doing a lot of reconstruction of the Sohae facilities, and even done some 3D imaging of the gantry facilities. So, I mean, once the new additions to the top of the gantry were there, I mean, everyone knew this was coming. It was going to be a matter of time. And to say, I mean, I think President Obama said the best is that, they were not really caught off guard by the launch because they knew it was coming, maybe not the exact date, but everyone knew that this was going to happen sooner or later.
And then another interesting point, that the launch sites which they're using are so big and they're so above ground and exposed that frankly, if it ever came into a conflict situation, those things would be wiped out before they'd even have a chance to fuel and put a rocket on one of them to send to the US.
Well, exactly. And that's always been my comment to, other news organizations, or when people ring me up and say, Steve, are you really concerned about what North Korea may do? And it's like, well, North Korea could choose to do something reckless and fire on Seoul or something. But the moment they do that, it's game over. And no dictator wants to end game like that.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. See, this is a great thing. North Korea has actually thrown America a huge bone for containing
China. Absolutely. Exactly.
They've done America a huge favor with this rocket launch. They have completely screwed with China's shit on this.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go back over the, I would say, last 18 months, every time THAAD comes up, it's always the South Korean press is saying, our people really want to discuss that with the United States and have it deployed here on the peninsula. And then typically the United States military response is, well, we aren't in a position to really discuss that at this point. Yeah. But now that we have the missile launch, boom, we're going to put things in there almost immediately.
Chucks away. I mean, and and the whole thing is, and they can say the whole time, oh, China, don't worry, this isn't about you. It's those North Koreans over there. Look, they just launched a missile that can hit us. We don't have any choice anymore. But yes, they can put right in front of China's main doorstep. They can put a wall basically against their whole strategic. I mean, for China's, geopolitical ambitions in the region, this is a major thing, and it's because of North Korea wanting to launch a bigger rocket. So
yeah, I mean, we've talked about things escalating in the South China Sea, but this has a way of possibly escalating things greatly in the East Asian region as well. Yeah.
So there's been a lot going on, obviously, in the Northeast Asia region. What has been going on? What's been big news as we go further south through Asia, perhaps through China and through Southeast Asia?
Well, I mean, earlier there was the whole China doing a civilian test of a completed airstrip on one of its reclaimed islands.
They really use those things for military uses. I couldn't even imagine how they would do that.
Yeah. Go figure.
China's been testing a lot of things. They've been testing having people in Hong Kong disappear and appear inside.
See, that whole thing is really interesting. You have the 5 booksellers and a couple of civil rights lawyers disappear, and then the booksellers magically appear in mainland China to address some kind of past crime they committed. Yeah. And Hong Kong authorities not given permission to actually interview or get firsthand information on what's being done up there.
And same with I think there's a Swedish human rights activist who was arrested in China. Yeah. He gave a televised confession. And let's face it, if you are arrested in China, they can make you disappear forever, and they wouldn't think twice about doing that. So, of course, you're going to do whatever they ask you to do. Televised confession, and you let me out of the country, sure. Tell me exactly what you want me to say, and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's scary stuff.
Well, and speaking of being taken, I mean, it was either today or possibly the day before, I don't know, in the last few days or so, South Korea actually put out a travel advisory to its citizens to avoid going to China, specifically in the border regions. They said, don't go, in the, North Korea, Chinese border regions for fear of being abducted, not necessarily by China, but perhaps by North Korean operatives, because there have been a few instances past where South Koreans are up in that trade zone up in the Chinese territory, and then all of a sudden they get picked up by North Korea.
Yeah. Well, and China's not exactly. I mean, they're still. It's hard to say that they're best buddies with North Korea at the moment. That's on a bit of a chill, but they're certainly not acting against North Korea. Repressing.
Well, I mean, it's well known. I mean, China needs North Korea as a buffer state, and their current tactics haven't been exactly the most, I guess, conducive to positive results with, as you said, that coming over. I mean, you're going to have more of a military presence in and around South Korea now.
Yeah. So, yes, indeed, China. One other big thing, I guess, from my own country, from New Zealand, two big things that have happened in New Zealand. First was the TPP agreement was executed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with Obama specifically saying, we need this because it stops China having control of the global trade rules. But, that was founded by New Zealand and Brunei and Singapore, as well as Chile, I think, were the original founding countries. And so that's a big landmark that happened. And just after TPP was signed, the New Zealand trade minister, who was actually standing in for the prime minister on our National Day, of course, had an enormous pink dildo thrown at him during the National Day celebrations at a protest. And that was great, having that all over the international headlines. Yeah, New Zealand made the news. We don't really care what it gets on the news for, because it's just nice to know that people know we exist sometimes. So yeah, there was that. Myanmar's got a lot going on, haven't they, at the moment?
Oh yeah, I mean this is really interesting. So I guess March 17th is the date to watch now, because I guess that's the short list of who is going to be possibly the next president of Myanmar or Burma. So the election came through, the Democratic Party won, Aung San Suu Kyi's party won, she re-won her seat, but of course she's prohibited from being president because of the Constitution. And now there's all this back channel communication, whether or not, the military is willing to deal with someone she deems can be president, that she can maneuver behind the scenes, or if they're going to suspend Article 59 and temporarily allow her to actually hold the office of president and just deal with her directly.
And if I recall correctly, the NLD has a sufficient majority. I mean, it was an incredible election result. And
they had like 80% of the seats. I mean, it's just incredible.
I mean, they could substitute the Constitution for a Peanuts, comic strip if they wanted to at the moment, couldn't they?
Something like that. I'm not quite sure how the whole ratification and amendment process would go. But one of the things that is interesting is that I spoke with Jonah Blink about this a while back, about is it a disservice to democracy if Aung San Suu Kyi comes in there and says, even though I can't hold the office of president, I will put in someone in place who's essentially going to be my puppet. Using air quotes there. Is that a disservice to democracy? And one of his comments was, it's the best of a bad situation.
That's probably a good summary.
She is the leader. Everyone wants her to be the leader. It's just this one little thing in the way. The one thing that I'm still waiting to see, and several rights groups are still waiting to see, is whether or not she starts tackling some of the problems with ethnic minorities that are essentially disavowed of being allowed to have a life there, a fruitful life in Myanmar.
Not only that, I mean, honestly, when you even say the word ethnic and Myanmar in the same sentence, you're getting into a dark and hopeless place, frankly, even for the most popular government, I think. And that's going to be the biggest test of the democracy there, because the whole rationale for the military dictatorship the whole time it's been there is the fact that they have these crazy issues with their incredible diversity.
Well, I mean, that came out last week. That came out last week that, one of the reasons why the military still needs to have their 25 seats or whatever is because there's still a fear in that cadre that without a strong military presence, it's going to fall back into complete disarray across the nation.
Yeah. And it is a good point to remind, perhaps, that, there are countries which have transitioned, peacefully and smoothly into democracy. But, I think it's naive to presume that it's always everyone's just going to be so. It'd be like the people predicting when they went into Iraq, how everyone would be so happy that they'd be democratic and liberated, that everything would just be fine afterwards. It doesn't always go smoothly. Simply, democracy isn't a magic wand, and in fact, those issues can come back and even creep up and actually cause trouble again. Even after the euphoria comes off. So Myanmar has huge internal challenges to address. But that said, it's such an exciting opportunity for them, because most of them, I think, still do speak English. So it's a place that can connect perhaps more easily than many of their neighbors into the global economy, which they've been isolated from due to sanctions until now. So they have the lowest, I think, wages in Asia. I think they're as lower than like Laos. So the potential for investment and for kind of rapid economic development, along with the the democracy dividend potential, is so big there. So there's a lot of potential for things to go really well, but there's so much potential for things to also go completely awry. It is a fascinating place to watch. Yeah.
So I'm very hopeful that things will continue on a more positive spin, but you have to wait and see.
Yeah. Anything else that's caught your attention on the Asian news scene in the last 2 months?
Well, I mean, gosh. So I think one thing that was interesting was, of course, we had the Jakarta bombing during the past month as well, and the fairly quick roundup of individuals there. But also, over in Thailand, the prime minister once more says that it could be now 2018. Before we get a vote, or late 2017, 2018 before we get a vote. So it keeps on getting pushed off. But no matter what, the next draft will be out there for people to see.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny how you could call Myanmar and Thailand trading places, and so I mean, it's always been a bad joke until now. But seriously. It is not cool. Malaysia's had some interesting problems. I mean, first of all, I think so. The Malaysian Prime Minister has had this accusation of receiving massive payments, I think, from a Saudi Arabian oil sheikh.
Yeah. So that was at the 1MDB fund. Yeah. Right.
And basically, the internal commission that he set up to investigate himself completely acquitted him on all charges and accusations. But as soon as that happened, I think both the Swiss government, which has access to all of his Swiss banking records, and I think there was another government as well in France or somewhere like that, they came out and said, wait a minute, no, this guy totally has billions and billions of dollars, and we're expecting you to do more than that.
Well, I mean, that was the previous attorney general that was investigating Najib, he was indicted on charges. Other people have been removed from office, but he gave himself the all clear. The Saudis came out and said, hey, we did give money, but that was a personal contribution and not some kind of bribe, not some kind of funny money.
It's better than ISIS, right? I mean,
yeah.
He's a respectable person. Speaking of scandals as well, Japan's had a raft of kind of smaller scandals. I always like to point out, I was tweeting about this tonight as well. Basically, you have to think that just basically every politician in Japan, they do what they do, but there's basically, I'm sure they're stored within the bureaucrats' offices, in Kasumigaseki in central Tokyo. They just have a warehouse somewhere of just files and files and files of information on all of these public figures, so that whenever, is convenient for whatever purpose. The thing about Japanese scandals that I love, it's not so much, sometimes the content is, of course, incredible, and that's what everyone focuses on. Oh, Mr. Paternity Leave was actually having an affair. So maybe the people who said he shouldn't be taking paternity leave were right after all. But it's not so much that everyone's focusing on the affair aspect or whatever. I don't think that scandal would have broken if he hadn't drawn so much attention to himself and upset so many people inside his own party about the fact that he was being the first male politician in the national government to ever ask for and insist on taking paternity leave. It's just a massive, convenient coincidence that, like a month later, they released photos of him having affair-like activity. I'm sure he was done in by his own people on that. And then you have the, which isn't to say that he didn't do it. Of course he did it, but it's almost like they want dirty people in government so that they can kind of hang the sword over them and keep them all in line. So I'm being kind of conspiracy brother at the moment. But there's another one as well. There's Amari, who was, of course, the trade minister who negotiated the whole TPP for years. His hair went like worse than an American president. He was like shot white hair and completely stressed and aged by this. And like 2 weeks before the signing, and I'd say this was probably opposition was just looking for the best way to try to make out they look bad. A construction companies in Japan are a byword for basically. The big construction companies are totally legit, but the small local area construction companies are basically slush funds, money laundering entities, and they're completely they're always affiliated with little political groups and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that a construction company paid him a bunch of money and asked for a bunch of requests, and then went to the press and said, "Oh yeah, I paid him all this money and asked these favors, and he totally did it for us," even when he's denying it. He's completely set up. I mean, he took the money and he did what they asked, and it's all true, but he was still set up. I love scandals in Japan. They're just like perfectly. They're as efficient as the trains. They run perfectly on time.
No, yeah, I mean, just about every office. I always say you have to be completely bonkers to want to run for office, because if there's any dirt, people will find it, and if there is no dirt, chances are there'll be some found anyway.
Well, this is what, in a way, is so interesting about that guy from Toronto, right? I mean, if everyone's dirty anyway, why be hiding afraid in the closet about it? Why not just be,
Just be out there.
I actually saw there's a I don't know if you're into electronic music, but there's a Canadian artist called Dead Mouse. Have you heard of him? He's kind of big. He's like Skrillex, but he's one of these kind of new dubstep, makers. So he's made a lot of money, and he decided to buy a brand new Lamborghini and have it custom painted with Nyan Cat all over it, which apparently really upset the Lamborghini. Oh no, it was Ferrari, and the Ferrari company's been like trying to take an injunction out against him for painting his car that way. They're extremely upset. There's a video of him. It's like the Seinfeld driving with people. Uh-huh. He's driving the mayor of Toronto and having a 30-minute conversation with the mayor of Toronto inside this Ferrari. And it's a great video. I mean, seriously, I want to hang out with that guy. I can see how he got voted in spite of all the crack and everything.
Yeah, Ford's a character.
Although I would say, looking at the American race, that he could be a candidate based on. What's your take on? I mean, moving outside of Asia, given that you're going to Washington D.C., what is your take on the zoo that you're walking into?
Yeah, this I think is by far the most interesting election I have seen of late, because typically you have each main party, the Republicans and Democrats, you have two candidates that are fairly the same. There's a little difference, and they're vying for each other's votes. But here in this election, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, one with a quote unquote mainstream candidate and one with a very divergent candidate.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at New Hampshire, the divergent candidates on both parties won.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll give you my own thoughts on this. That I predicted, as an outside observer who pretty much looks at elections now, probably like I suspect a lot of Americans do, as a type of reality TV show. When you choose the two people to be trapped on the island together in the final runoff for the election, do you want them to be boring and sensible people, or do you want them to be ideological and crazy? It's kind of like when you decide what football team you're supporting, why would you go for someone who acts like they're trying to get Democrat votes? But again, the whole US process, it always seems to be a bit of a gauntlet of first trying to appeal to the hardcore of your party and then trying to jump back to the center to actually get elected based on the middle votes, which actually decide the final outcome.
Well, yeah, and Gosh, and okay, so we had the Iowa caucuses, now you have New Hampshire, and now we're going to move forward, and the field's going to continue to thin, and it's just so long and arduous that I just can't wait for it to be over. But I am actually, this will be, I guess, I'll be able to vote in, I guess, yeah, I'll be able to vote in the United States this time.
Yeah.
I haven't missed as in not voted, but I haven't been able to vote in the United States for the past 2 cycles.
I hadn't been able to vote in New Zealand since 1990.
Yeah.
And I'm entitled to vote. Oh, and I'm going to miss out on the flag referendum because I'm not eligible.
I know.
Well, I actually tweeted. I cheekily tweeted. Well, New Zealand's such a small country that there's a 50% chance when you tweet at the Prime Minister that he will actually tweet back to you. So I tried and I said, how about letting Kiwis abroad? How about giving us more voting rights that we can vote because I'll vote for your stupid flag? And I actually had for the first time in my whole life, I've had a New Zealand internet troll chase me after I made that comment. It was kind of interesting. I'm sure they were tweeting from some sort of institution at the time, but yeah, I want a new flag. It's like no one wants it because the Prime Minister they think it's the Prime Minister trying to make himself look cool, and that immediately kills you in New Zealand if you try to be cool. Hence, people come out like me. But yeah, no, with America, it is too long, but at least it is kind of. I like it as being like pro wrestling. It's a spectacle. The loudest and the biggest biceps on both sides. They seem to be taking it. It's fun to. It's kind of fun to watch.
Well, the debates sometimes are fun to watch, but a lot of it's just stumping, and then not a whole lot of substance. And you get that on both sides, and that's the unfortunate part of it.
Isn't it a metaphor though for how society is kind of going?
Sure, no, I completely agree with that.
Everything's become more simplistic, more extreme, more. There's no nuance. No, well, I respect how intelligent you are. That's gone. That's disappearing in so many places now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've seen some interesting theories on this lately as well. This is the whole the millennials who have gone through from being teenagers with the internet and have learned to communicate. Through watching internet debates and so on, it's made everybody just more extremist about political correctness, about no tolerance for centrist views.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be agreeing with me. You need to violently disagree with me. This is like
I think when you factor in shorter attention spans, I think both Trump and Sanders are keying into a huge distrust of the political machine that's been in play. I think to a large degree, many candidates say what they want to say just to get more press time, to rile people up, and to follow them, whether or not they actually believe in them, or and like I always have said, whoever holds the over office still has to work with Congress. So if you get a far divergent candidate elected, whether or not they actually be able to implement any of their plans still remains to be seen.
Oh, of course. But the level that it's kind of funny if you don't support Trump or you support Democrats or whatever, I know it's completely incomprehensible how anyone can support Trump to the people who don't support Trump. And then likewise, you see the people talking. I can understand. I don't support Trump, but I can understand exactly why people support Trump. Sanders versus Trump. Some people will support Trump simply because they can't stand the idea of a Bush versus Clinton election. Everything that would represent as two-faced, not saying anything to the elected establishment, whichever outcome, frankly, won't be much of a material difference. Business as usual candidate, or someone who is just going to go in there, a Jesse Ventura, someone who's just going to go in there and make a lot of noise, maybe not be very effective, but maybe out of the 100 swings that they take at the ball, maybe they'll hit just once.
Get one good thing done.
I think it's kind of sad that that's the expectation, but I'm pretty sure that's the hope that's driving both Sanders and Trump supporters, actually. I think they're motivated by the same thing.
Could be, yeah. But there's a lot of similarities in the two campaigns.
Which would so upset the members of either campaign if you said that. But I think that's exactly right.
Well, there was a good piece. I can't remember which newspaper had it, but it was, why are Donald Trump and Sanders supporters, so vocal? And it all comes down to, there's a certain degree of similarities in what they're hearing from those respective candidates.
But I think they're proving if they end up being the successful candidates, here's a scary thought. They're gonna become the templates for all future campaigns and whatever it's going to be. Isn't that scary? Yeah. If they're successful, and that will prove that the majority of people want extreme, boisterous people. But at the same time, I'm sympathetic. Maybe that's what the U.S. political system itself needs. Maybe it's a little bit too inbred at this point. Maybe there's just too much vested interest and so on controlling. And the thing which I do appreciate about Trump, that he boasts about, is that he can't be bought. He buys people. He buys people like Jeb Bush. I love how he said, I know how much you cost. In a Republican debate, but that's the number one reason. I mean, even if what he would do would be worse than what Jeb would do, at least he'd be doing it of his own free will and not at the behest of what corporations want to do.
True.
That's something. I mean, for what it's worth, I can appreciate. Although again, it's going to be fascinating. It's a bit like Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan for me if it's those two. So it's kind of.
Yeah. So I'm really interested to see where we fall. Say April, May. That's where I'm really.
Well, surely we'll know by then. That's right. It always go halfway through those primaries. I don't know who would want to be like the last primary. It's just a complete waste of time after a few months, isn't it?
Well, I mean, eventually you do. I mean, but then you have, yes and no. I mean, with the Democratic, I guess the Democratic and Republican, with those two top candidates being so close. Yeah. You need the primary votes to count up the delegate votes for the respective conventions to see who's going to actually get the nomination from the respective committee.
Yeah. Sorry, some people are starting a campaign for me. I just have to mention that equal rights for all dairy. I suggested ice cream for everyone, and then someone suggested butter 2016 because
exactly, but.
I was just saying equal rights.
2 sticks of butter in every home every week.
People need the butter, man. You got no idea what it's like living in Soviet Russia with ration. I mean, don't get me started.
What is the latest on the butter update?
Don't get me
butter update, February 2016.
So this is frankly, so when the armory scandal broke, that the construction company dobbed him in and got him fired, he immediately apologized. I said, well, look, he's been obviously set up, and this is obviously time to be it this way. And I actually feel kind of sorry for the guy that he's worked so hard on this for so many years. He's his hair, he's aged, he's destroyed by this thing, and at the very last week, he has to resign. But all caps, this is what you get for not dropping tariffs on butter. This is what happens: is somebody will plant money on you, and you will have to resign. He should have dropped the tariffs on. We should have gotten us more butter. The situation is interesting. Japan has now full stocks of butter, but the supermarkets still have rationing. And the regular newspapers were investigating this, and they kept asking, where in the supply chain is the bottleneck? Why is there insufficient amounts of butter coming to the supermarkets? And it seems that there are actual wholesalers in Japan who are deliberately hoarding butter to keep the stocks low, to keep the price up. So again, this is a closed system where there's monopoly-run butter production and wholesalers that, with no competition because no foreign butter is allowed in, and the wholesalers are doing this to us in our orifices. And the newspapers even found out about it and published about it, and no one cares. There still is a limit of 1 stick of butter per person in every supermarket in Tokyo, and they could have solved it through the TPP thing, and they didn't. So it sucks. That's how it's going. It's like, basically, this is where I feel sympathy for North Korea. I tell you, I did have an interesting experience, actually. I tweeted about this when it happened in December. My son had to go into the hospital. Mm-hmm. Actually, it was January, just when we got back. It was actually when the nuclear test happened. I always mark my son's hospital visits according to the most recent North Korean nuclear test. So when we were in the hospital, there was a boy in the bed next to my son, and the mother was in there and was talking with the son. And I'm just sitting with my son, and my son's asleep, so I'm just sitting there quiet, and I can hear behind the curtain in Japanese they're talking. was like, sorry, Dad can't come to see you in the hospital. So I was like, why not? Because a nuclear bomb went off in North Korea. And I was like, well, that's got nothing to do with us. And it's, oh, yes, it does, because there are lots of North Korean people in Japan, and Dad's going to be on an emergency standby for if there's any trouble. And the more I listen, it sounds like his dad is probably a member of the North Korean Residents Association in Japan, which consists of 300,000 normal everyday. You wouldn't know that they weren't regular everyday Japanese people, but they happen to be North Korean citizens who lead normal lives, but they attend North Korean schools. And even the nurse, it's kind of funny, when the mum went home, the nurse went up and said, so are you North Korean? And the boy said, well, my mum's Japanese, my dad is North Korean, and you go to a North Korean school? He said, yeah. I said, tell me all about the school. The nurses were actually asking. And I have to admit, I was eavesdropping as well. Was I had nothing better to do? But the nurses were just asking him straight. And it was actually super, super interesting, just as a small window on the life of the many, many North Koreans. I've dated North Korean. They're normal, regular people here, actually. It's kind of, you get such a crazy image of North Korea, you forget. But the thing is, not only do we have lots of North Koreans, but the butter stocks are exactly the same as like in North Korea. So it's actually very similar over here to what it is over there. Sorry, just a little anecdote. It's a nice reminder that there are regular people over there, and that's why I feel terrible for them that they've got such a messed up regime.
Well, no, and even the ones that are in Japan. I mean, there were alerts coming out the past few days about extra security precautions for the North Korean schools in Japan because of fear of retaliation.
And another point around that, I think it was actually in December. It's drawn a lot of publicity in South Korea. I know the right-wing groups in Japan that go and harass the North Korean schools, and they're still Korean people, and that's not acceptable. So actually, I think it was Osaka, where there's a large North Korean community in Kyoto and Osaka, and they passed Japan's first ever racial hate speech ordinance.
That's true.
Police have never had. Well, I've always thought if the police really want to find an excuse, surely doing what they're doing in any case, or any type of person doing that, surely police can come up with some sort of an excuse to drag them away. But they've never done it before. But now they actually have a specific ordinance that says if you go and say anything racist towards anyone of a different country, specifically aimed at protecting the North Korean schools, an ordinance was passed. So there is also a hope that that's going to prove to be effective to some degree. But another reason I do hope we can one day be doing a reunion and talking about the some sort of liberation that might happen.
Nice.
That would be nice. So what are your plans for this? What is the foreseeable future? You're moving to Washington?
So for the next few weeks, we continue to pack, say our goodbyes, and then it's time to head over there.
Yeah. And your wife has lived in America before?
Yeah. We actually met in the United States over in Arizona. So this will be the first time for both of us living on the East Coast. Right. The anecdotal story from our trip. I wasn't too pleased about going to Washington, D.C. for my winter vacation because my personal preference is to go someplace warm and where I can wear flip-flops. Right. But our entire trip, warm weather followed us. So even in Washington, D.C., in the height of winter, it was about 20 degrees Celsius. It was fantastic.
Because Washington gets super cold, right?
It can get cold, at least around freezing. Yeah. But it was far from it. And then we went back to Arizona and we went up to Flagstaff, where I went to college. Ski town, 7,000 feet, gets on average 100 inches plus snow a year. Beautiful weather. Again, in the 20s. It was fantastic. Didn't need jackets. The only time we saw snow was on the way out of town as we were going back down to Phoenix. It was wonderful.
Nice. Well, thank you, El Nino.
Yes, El Nino.
El Nino, it's perfect, isn't it? The hot and spicy weather comes up from the Gulf of Mexico. So, yeah, well, very glad to hear that you were able to not have a completely freezing winter, although, yes, you are going to have to adapt to to East Coast climates and social norms as well, which are also quite different.
And time zone changes.
Indeed, that's another big one. So, So tell me, when are we going to do a catch-up? When are we going to get this? This is the provisional final episode.
I don't know. Because the East Coast is between 13 and 14 hours behind us.
It's not a great time zone, is it?
It's not all that conducive. So this would actually fall between 8:30 and 9:30 in my morning, which I may actually be at work. So that might be problematic for my bosses.
If you're Japanese, 8:30, there'd be a possibility you'd still be asleep. But in America, certainly in New Zealand, you'd be fully at work. And in America, you may or may not be at work or commuting.
So it just depends on what I actually be doing, what shifts I'll be doing. I have no idea.
Well, I'm sure we will find an opportunity at some point, at least for a check-in, at least for a catch-up, perhaps a Oyajis, perhaps. And you'll still be, of course, on Twitter, as you always are. And what's
you can,
sorry.
So you can find me on Twitter at Stephen_G_Miller, using my full name now, rather than Chi Ranger or A&W, just Stephen_G_Miller. So
and what was I going to say? Yes, so Asia News Weekly podcast as well. So that is going to be coming to let's take a hiatus. What's happening?
That's taking an extended hiatus as well, simply because I do know Voice of America does have some Asia-related programming, and I don't exactly want to produce programming that would compete with my employers.
Fair enough. Although I do hope that somehow that connects to the opportunity to do some broadcasting with them that you will be doing. I hope you are effectively joining them and getting the most out of the situation, as I'm sure you will do.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there, so we will see what happens.
Okay, well, cool. Well, of course, we will keep following you on Twitter and Facebook, and I can't wait to see your Voice of America video clips and sound clips and everything that starts, trickling out into the world and see how you settle in over there.
I'm really excited for it. It was an incredible opportunity that came up quite unexpectedly, so I'm glad to be making the move. So before we go, I mean, are there any questions over in the comment section that I should address before we end things?
Yes. Okay, everyone, last chance. Questions for Steve. There's about a 30-second lag, so I'm going to
absolutely gotta have that lag.
Questions. We dance through the lag. That's what we do.
Oh, we're dancing.
Yes.
As I continue to sit on the floor, as we have packed away desks, we have packed away chairs, we have packed away just about everything.
It does look like you're in a completely bare apartment, at least from that shot at the moment.
It's one of the few clean spots that we have.
Hey, Nakamura says you should be a voice actor. Have you ever actually done voice acting?
I've done a few voice projects here in Seoul. But between teaching and some of the other things, it's difficult to be able to do some stuff. I mean, I've done some narration that they've made a request in, and I've been able to do it at home at night and then fire off the files, but never really pursued that.
Razo Will has a question. What is the one thing you'll miss the most about living in Korea?
Oh, the blazing fast internet. Come on now.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Well, blazing fast, but also highly restricted, depending on what you're looking for.
Depending, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's amazing what VPNs can do these days. I would say, being able to go out and, order something online. Yeah. So in Korea, we have what's called Gmarket, which I think is tied in with eBay in some way. And there's other auction sites and whatnot. And it's one of the reasons why Amazon hasn't really caught on here, because these kind of things take the same kind of market type selling and warehouse functionality as Amazon. But the delivery of what you can have just as a normal consumer without having to pay for something like Prime, it is something I'll be missing. With all of our coffee mugs, I bought 4 25-centimeter wide rolls, 50 meter long, maybe? No, 25 meters long, 25 centimeters wide, 4 of those rolls of bubble wrap.
Wow.
And had them delivered to the house for like $10. And I'll miss that.
With US delivery services, you are going to have to accept that probably 1 in every 5 mugs is not going to make it in one piece.
Perhaps.
What is the food you're going to miss the most from Korea?
The food, really, I think I'm gonna miss like just little rice balls. That's my go-to meal. If I need something on the run, I'll stop into a bunshik restaurant, a little Korean food mom and pop place, get a gimbap, which would be onigiri, and just go.
Yeah, don't call it onigiri when you buy that. They could get aggravated.
Well, I would say, if you look at traditional onigiri, and the samgak kimbap versus the furumaki or the kimbap here, there are certain different kinds.
There are differences, yes. Oh yeah, and that's another good point as well. Question from Ty, is there any big drug problem in Korea?
Drug problem?
No.
A big drug problem? Well, I would say there's certainly an underlying current of it. Whenever there are drug busts made, they like to specify, who is bringing it in terms of nationality. So I think, from a controlling standpoint, there's certainly the perception that they don't want to make this a Korean problem, but it's an infiltration from outside cultures they're having.
Japan has a prominent, every big case in the news lately has been methamphetamine, which, by the way, was invented in Japan. But yes, people stay loyal to the product with the big baseball player scandal recently and so on. Marijuana, we had the big Adderall scandal a few months ago as well, where an American with a Adderall prescription for ADHD.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Someone sent it to their kid in a Tylenol container, and they tested it, and it is a form of speed, right? I mean, it's pharmaceutical use, but Japan doesn't recognize it as a legitimate pharmaceutical yet, so it tested positive for speed. The girl was arrested. So yeah, Japan has its issues there as well. Okay, the other, I think, final question, this is probably the most important one, is can you dress up as a Starfleet officer?
I can.
You can. There we go. The question is answered. I guess all Sean would say to that is you need to then make it so.
Make it so, exactly.
Oh, by the way, there's one more question I'm interested in, so I'm just going to ask you: are there any good Is there any good surfing in Korea?
Sir, I would say no.
Yeah, that's the image. I'd like to know that.
I'm not a huge fan of any of the beaches here.
Well, you're from Arizona. I mean, that's a big, surf location.
Well, I mean, at least in these states you get some, nice beaches. But Korea, I just don't like the beaches, and I haven't seen really any waves in Korea that you could really do decent surfing on. I'm sure there are some swells where you could maybe get some time on a board, but nothing that I would want to spend time trying to learn or go actively out and try and surf.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. There's one comment actually which Bradley Ford just reminded me of, that today Hikosaemon announced that the Tokyo annual Hanami for YouTubers will be on April 2nd in Tokyo at the same spot that we use every year. Thanks to Hikosaemon again for organizing. It is a little bit early, and there is a possibility that we are a bit too early and the date might need to be adjusted. But the forecast is saying that cherry blossoms will start on March 26th. So April 2nd should be about right. So for those who want to know more, check out my Facebook. I've shared it on my page, so you can find it through there. This is probably the number one YouTube-related social event, at least in Japan, that we have all year. The people fly in from overseas, from all around Japan for it. It would be great if you could make it, but I guess you're going to be stateside by then. Yeah.
And truth be told, if we're going to be here in Korea, Joe and I were going to try and make it out, but not this time.
Well, we would love it if you came with us next year. We would love that. But yes, indeed. Well, you've got other things to do for this time, but I'm sure we will get you in Japan at some point anyway.
I hope so.
All the best with Washington. We will do a catch-up soon, so don't worry. Steve is not gone. He is going to be, and you're still going to be active, of course, as I'm sure you have been on all the different Twitter, Facebook and whatnot. So we will see you again. But thank you for coming. This is the last episode, at least for now. We're going on an extended hiatus for What's Up Asia. And we'll see if there's a chance to revive it in the future. I'm sure we will take it. But for now, more exciting adventures for you.
Yeah, and it's bittersweet to kind of put a pause on this monthly gathering.
But it's a big new adventure. I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing, as I say, to me, you are the voice of America. You're the American who, you've got the voice, you do the news. So I want you to go over there and kick ass for all of us. So
I appreciate that.
You already are there. So best of luck with all of that, and we will be following you and supporting you from over here.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So okay, that's it for tonight. And Tyson, thank you for answering the questions. And indeed, we'll be back. Watch this space. There's more going on. There's plenty of stuff. Watch Steve's feeds for what's going on with his stuff. I'm sure if there's stuff that you're involved in that goes up on the web, you'll share links and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait for that. So okay, thanks everyone for joining. It's been a long show, but it's been a good one. And thank you for joining us for our final What's Up Asia. Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Okay, good night.